BJJ very personal, but I wish that finale today all the success in the world. Obviously, they stole the pit, the rules, the judges, the staff, the blocking staff from working our event. But I hope the finale goes off with a bang today, and all you guys tune in to watch my ideas come to fruition.
Fuck the UFC!
Alright, so Craig Jones has officially asserted himself as public enemy number 1 to the UFC, and for all the things that he said about not just the company but Dana White himself, I'm pretty surprised Dana hasn't had one of his classic public meltdowns yet. And if you're not aware of who this guy is, just know that he's pretty widely regarded as one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the world. And over the course of the last year and a half or so, this guy has really gone on the offensive regarding subjects like The Ultimate Fighter, Dana being a slave driver, and most recently calling out UFC BJJ for blatantly view-botting their most recent event featuring Mikey Musumeci. And you know what the best part is? Jones doesn't work for the UFC, so outside of hiring some hitmen to take this guy out, there's basically nothing Dana can do as retaliation. Hey, as someone who's been very vocal when it comes to calling out Dana's scumbaggery, watching Craig troll and openly criticize him has been amazing, and yeah, in this video I'm going to be talking about all this and more. Craig's involvement with the UFC began in July 2021, where he was Team Volkanovski's jiu-jitsu coach on The Ultimate Fighter, and even though there weren't any immediate issues during the filming process, he definitely noticed some issues with how the show operates, which he would later make public, but just put a pin in that for now. Fast forward to 2024, the UFC then reaches back out to him to see if he'd be interested in joining their new BJJ initiative as a coach. Jones was actually not amongst the UFC's first pick of a coach, as they initially approached Mikey Musumeci, who ended up accepting the position, and the other person they wanted was Gordon Ryan, who turned down the opportunity because it would have interrupted his steroid cycle. So when the UFC needed to find one more coach for the first season of UFC BJJ, they then turned to Craig Jones.
So the second choice was they came to call me to jump on board, and they offered, I won't say the number, they offered a decent amount of money to do it, but really, like, in terms of the commitment, obviously it was a week of filming, and then I'd have to cut my plans to help my buddy in Ukraine. So there were a few factors going into why I wouldn't do it, but it will also be quite a restrictive contract. So yeah, we had conversations where there was nothing in writing, nothing official, but for a long period of time, their athletes were able to do CJI. But when I did formally decline the offer, I asked for too much money, apparently, right? Any athlete that they spoke with that said they were participating in CJI, they weren't put on the show. But I did sneak a peek at some of the text message conversations between the producers of the show and the athletes themselves. And yeah, like, if you were to participate in the show, it would be, you could not do CJI.
So if this is true, which personally I'm sure it is, the UFC got so butthurt that he turned them down that they forbid the UFC BJJ athletes from competing in events that are hosted by him, which if you're not familiar with the Craig Jones Invitational, it's quickly become one of the biggest sport jiu-jitsu events in the world. Mind you, he said that the money that he was offered was decent, but his biggest issue with the contract was that it was too restrictive, and Jones values his freedom too much, and I respect that. He's gotten this far without the UFC, and he'd rather continue betting on himself instead of having to fall in line with Dana. And not only did he host the first CJI event before UFC BJJ was even announced, UFC BJJ straight up copied the rule set of CJI.
I'm going to have an emotional response when somebody copies you without credit. There's going to be an emotional response. That's my own personal feelings, given I credited the 10-point must system, I credited the pit. It was kind of me combining everything I'd seen work in jiu-jitsu in isolation and putting them together to come up with what I believed was the most exciting rule set for jiu-jitsu. So obviously, I'm going to be emotional when the UFC does copy it without crediting some inspiration. You know, that's going to bother me.
Like, where does the UFC get off stealing this guy's rule set on top of trying to lock him into a bullshit contract where he can't do all the things he wants to do, and when he declines, they start treating him like he's an enemy? Jones has said many times that in an ideal world, he wants jiu-jitsu athletes to be able to move between CJI, UFC BJJ, and even 1FC freely. I really don't know much about his background, but from everything that I've seen and heard from him, it does seem like he just wants what's best for jiu-jitsu. He's even said that as long as the guys that choose UFC BJJ are getting paid, he'll consider that a win, but at the end of the day, it's better for the athletes as well as the sport if they get to have options with where they compete. Moreover, I just think it's lame that UFC BJJ is making their athletes, who many are friends with Jones by the way, choose sides. A lot of these guys have known him for years, and all of a sudden they're put in this unfair situation contrived by the UFC because now that they know he won't play ball, he's now considered an enemy, and it really doesn't have to be that way. The worst part is, as good as his intentions seem to be, there's just no way that he has the resources to be able to compete with the UFC in any meaningful way. He can fight the good fight all he wants, but it's an inevitability that UFC BJJ is going to lock in more and more athletes into exclusive contracts contracts. That in and of itself isn't a bad thing because I'm sure jiu-jitsu competitors make next to nothing, so getting the chance to earn steady income for them is great, but it's the monopolistic business practices that bother me. Craig wants BJJ guys to have as many opportunities as possible to compete and make money, whereas the UFC is trying to make it so there's only one option. Okay, we gotta move on. In April of this year, Craig decided to troll the UFC a little bit by posting to his Instagram and declaring that he's going to supposedly be one of the coaches on an upcoming show called The Ultimate Grappler versus Gordon Ryan. There is a ton of bad blood between these guys, so a lot of jiu-jitsu bros got really hyped up by this, but most were able to see that it was a troll post. Now obviously this wasn't an outright attack directed towards the UFC, but the clues are there. The Ultimate Grappler is clearly a spin on the Ultimate Fighter, and Craig had turned down the UFC's offer to do a coaching job for them already. I wouldn't say that it's subtle necessarily, but you can tell that he held back a little bit. However, he absolutely did not hold back when a month later, as the UFC was forced to pay out $375 million as a result of their antitrust lawsuit, Jones posted to his social media where he called out the promotion for taking advantage of their fighters. He basically said exactly what we all know by now, and that the company is exploiting its fighters and creating a power imbalance that doesn't allow them any security. But then he turned his attention to the Ultimate Fighter and posted that the show is UFC propaganda where they can continue to milk free fights without paying the contestants. And seeing as this guy spent several weeks in the tough environment, I think he has a better understanding than most about the conditions of the show. 1 month after that, in June, right before the UFC BJJ season finale aired, Craig posted this to his Instagram.
Fuck the UFC.
What's great about this is that Mike Perry commented showing his support, but the very next day he once again took to his Instagram and doubled down on his previous claims that the UFC BJJ contracts are bad for the sport and how the promotion barred their athletes from competing at CJI immediately after he turned them down. Now, it was around this time when he first started making claims that the UFC viewbotted the UFC BJJ finale livestream, obviously to make it seem like the event was more successful than it really was.
So what do you think was the incentive for them to buy views and likes? Like, don't you think that it would have performed well without all of that, considering the cast was really good, it was a really fun action? Like, they didn't really have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, like, and this was pure speculation, right? There could have been 1,000 people write the same comment. We don't know for sure from a liability perspective whether they did or not. That's if they were to have done that, that's one aspect that bothers me too, because like, as an athlete myself, I'm always looking for leverage in negotiations. We want to know what our true value is. So CJI, we didn't buy any views. We didn't buy any comments. You can do that. You can do that in a sneaky way. That helps you secure sponsors. Helps you secure sponsors for your event, right? It's going to make you personally more money.
I'm not gonna lie, at first glance when I see 1.5 million views on this event, I don't really think it seems all that suspicious. It's definitely a lot of views, but I don't think it's all that unreasonable for a finale event that's free to hit that number. But things do start getting mighty suspicious when you realize that out of 1.5 million views, there are 1,777 comments. That is way too low. There is absolutely something fishy going on here. There is no way that any video or live stream can pull in that many views and get that small amount of comments. It straight up doesn't even make sense. Just using my videos as a comparison, my most recent Coked Up Connor video, which has done a little over 200,000 views, has 1,777 comments. What a coincidence. And that is not even the most egregious example. 2 weeks ago, UFC BJJ held another event, once again headlined by Mikey Musumeci, and this somehow has over 9 million views. This is so blatantly fraudulent that it's actually a bit insulting that they thought we wouldn't notice. I don't care if the event was free to watch, a jiu-jitsu event is never going to pull 9 million fucking views. For reference, 9 million views is just a little bit under the Khabib versus Conor press conference at 9.4 million views. By the way, the Khabib versus Conor press conference has 24,000 comments, whereas the UFC BJJ event has once again less than 400 comments. As you can probably expect, Jones was quick to point out how shady this all looks and calls out how it's statistically impossible for legit videos to get so little engagement, which is true.
Is it possible? You can buy views on someone else's page. You can attach those. Is it possible, Mikey, that someone bought views on the UFC page to then say, look at the UFC, they're frauds, look at what they're doing?
Interesting.
Is that
like a setup, like they planned?
Yes. Is that possible? I feel like that's a possibility. Who's paying attention to this sort of thing? I feel like someone might have planted it to then say, look at these frauds. Is that possible? That feels more plausible to me than them buying views on their video. What do you think?
This might be one of the dumbest things that I've ever heard. Do you know how much money somebody would have to spend to generate millions of fake views? Nobody else would do this except for the UFC to make themselves look better. They're trying to artificially inflate their numbers on a brand new product so that they can convince people that it's more lucrative than it really is. This isn't some crazy conspiracy being carried out by some third party party to make the UFC look fraudulent. It's simply the UFC being fraudulent. It is a company that's known to do shady shit doing shady shit. I made a video a couple months ago where I break down how Dana viewbots power slap, and it's even more apparent that he's doing the same shit here with UFC BJJ. Like, I would say that this is deceptive, but I can't imagine anyone with more than 2 brain cells being deceived by what the UFC is doing. Regardless, I have basically agreed with everything that Craig Jones has done and said when it comes to the UFC. I wouldn't even say that I'm a fan of watching jiu-jitsu, but I've definitely become a fan of this guy. The only thing that I'm worried about is that if he keeps this up, then Dana might tap into his connections with the mob and have this guy eliminated, because Craig is everything that Dana hates. He's a guy that he has no power over who isn't afraid to say the truth. Anyways, that's the video for today. Definitely let me know what you think about Craig's ongoing feud with Dana. Do you think the UFC is viewbotting their events? As always, if you like the video, then like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Are you at war with the UFC? Would you categorize it as such?
I mean, I don't know. Is a bazooka an act of war? I'm not sure.
I mean, the reason I ask is you're quite, you're prevalent at some of these events. You have guys that you train. You're in their corner. Do you think that you will be okay to continue to corner these fighters?
I had thought about that, and I was really, I mean, here's the thing. If you don't answer the phone calls coming your way, how do they notify you banned?
That's good.
Put the phone on Do Not
That's
Disturb.
right. So you just show, up.
They got to tell me somehow. Yeah, I mean, I would be shocked, to be honest, if they were to ban me.
If they were.
Cornering.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like, I mean, the big picture is like UFC hates me.
You think so?
But they also hate Dagestani wrestlers. And Jack Della is fighting Islam Makhachev. So they're in, it's a catch-22. They're like, fuck, we hate this guy, but we hate these wrestlers as well. So I think they want me. I helped them get rid of Bilal. Like, hold on a bit longer, guys. We'll get rid of Islam Makhachev for you.